And it's a series of remarks concerning the possibility of naturalizing social beings or social theory. We will see the difference between the two perhaps later. And I have taken the opportunity of that series of remarks in a discussion with Sperber a few weeks ago concerning exactly that point. That means the naturalization of social theory. The aim of my talk is to say that in fact the naturalization is not a threat against social ontology, and that the connection between naturalization and social ontology is more complex. But I will I shall criticize a certain sort of naturalization, a sort of naturalization we can define as half epistemological, half ontological. And let us start now with talking in itself. Two main points in what I have to say. First, a presentation of the Sperber's naturalization of the social beings, and second, a reconstruction of Sperber's implicit social ontology and how to make it explicit, because my hypothesis is that the Sperber's naturalization is based on ontological presupposition, and I don't criticize that fact, but it makes more complicate the relation between naturalization and social ontology. There is no choice between very radical naturalized theory of social beings and social ontology. It's exactly my point. I want to show that Sperber's program of naturalization is based on ontological presupposition, and then reconstruct this program in relation with this presupposition. And second, I want to make explicit the social ontology implicit in this presupposition and evaluate the ultimate coherence of this social ontology. The Sperber's naturalization of social beings comports two main objectives: unification of social sciences. As you know, social sciences exist in many ways, anthropology, economy, sociology, and so on. And one of the objectives is to make a unification of social sciences on an empirical and naturalist basis, and unification of empirical sciences to a more ambitious objective, for sure. But I will not say anything about this second objective. And besides these two objectives, what is the reduction of social phenomena to combinations of psychological and ecological phenomena. It is in fact a quotation of Sperber: combinations of psychological and ecological phenomena. Sperber uses all what I will say is in fact a reading of his book on the epidemiology of ideas, the contagion des idées. You know, everyone here knows this book, at least by reputation or by oui dire, and I don't summarize the content of this book. But in that book, Sperber affirms that epidemiology is without a specific ontology, and that this fact presents an advantage. I think that both affirmations are wrong. I think that there is an ontology of epidemiology. I will talk about that later in the second part of the paper, and we have to notice that Barry Smith and the IFOMIS research group in Saarbrücken on ontology of biomedical sciences is devoted to that ontology of health, of biology, of epidemiology. And second, it is not an obvious advantage to have a model without ontology. At least it would be necessary to discuss that point, that a model which is not ontologically loaded would be better than a model ontologically loaded. It's a very complex issue, but it is not obvious that it is an advantage for a model to be without ontology. The naturalization of mental phenomena is conceived as a basis for the naturalization of social phenomena, and the relation between contents are reduced to material processes. Ultimately reduced to material processes, because as it is the case usually in naturalization attempts, we have to make a distinction between the intention and the realization. But I will not be mesquin, je ne serai pas mesquin, and I will not criticize that point. It's not my point to say that there is a huge gap between intention and realization. I will take Sperber's program of naturalization frankly at its face value, and the reduction is founded on a relation of identity between social processes and cognitive processes. I was surprised but when I discovered that thesis, but I have checked many times, and yes, this relation of identity between social processes and cognitive processes at the end is a main point of the program of naturalization, at least in Sperber's version. The theoretical tool used by Sperber is causal cognitive chains, CCC. Causal cognitive chains are chains. They are cognitive and they are causal. Both social and cognitive processes are causal cognitive chains. Causal cognitive chains have cognitive processes as input and output. For example, take the intention of an agent X as input and the action of Y as output. It is a structure of order, a social phenomenon. We can have this very simple example as a starting point of causal cognitive chains. But causal cognitive chains could be evidently more complex. But in every case, you have an input and an output, and between the two, a transmission of information between the two, and a causal relation between the two. And I say a causal relation and not a causal connection, a causal relation, because causal connection will be probably too strong. Deus ex machina. CCC play a quasi-magical role in connecting, in fact, two realms of being. The main problem of social ontology is, as we have seen at length this morning, is the connection between physical and social realms of being. The citation of the metaphysician Santayana that I love very much. And on every occasion I put his name everywhere. The main problem of social ontology is the connection between physical and social realms of being. And CCC are a bridge between the stimuli of individual perception and social behavior. between the mental and the physical. They are like a vinculum substantiale. It is an allusion to Leibniz, because Leibniz is in a correspondence with the Jesuit Debos, discussed the very vexating question of the union of the soul and the body, and he found this solution of a vinculum substantiale. A vinculum is a sort of connective relation, and substantiale means that this connective relation is in the same time substantial. It is a sort of deus ex machina, so very, very beautiful. And I think that CCC are in the same category of artistic, philosophical creation, making, in fact, the juncture at a point where it is very important and delicate to make it. Okay. CCC may take a social form, and in that case, it is a passage to CCC, to cultural, cognitive, causal chains, CCCC. And in that case, we have the passage to social interaction. Social interaction are supposed to be dependent upon transmission of information. And in that case, we are not very far from documentality, and we will see. But as transmission of information is depending upon social interaction are in fact identical to transmission of information. Transmission of information is impossible without documents. Documentality is therefore an essential dimension of social interaction. But the difference between CCC and CCCC, and purely cognitive and the cultural cognitive, is evanescent. Evanescent is English? Is evanescent? It is evanescent. It does exist. Okay. It's evanescent. Is evanescent if we do not give an accurate description of documentality. I think that at that point, in order to have really a difference between the two, a theory of documentality is very useful. We cannot just affirm the identity of transmission and information and social interaction. It's not enough. But, okay. The ontology of CCCC is not an ontology of individual, but of material processes. Representations and transmission of information reduced to material processes, in the best of the case, if the program is achieved. CCCC, and we have heard about that this morning too, CCCC are typically infra-individual or sub-personal. The consequence is that social phenomena are causal connection of mental events inside individuals. It's what is, in fact, the basis, the ultimate basis of the social phenomenon. But, in some sense, infra-individualism is an individualism. The ontology of infra-individualism is, in fact, individualism. It is, according to me, it is a sort of solipsism. Everything is located in the head of rational agents. The question of the nature of collective representations remains open. The ontology of CCCC is an ontology without the collective dimension. And perhaps we don't want to have a sort of reification of collective intentionality, or a reification of collectivity, perhaps. But an ontology of the social without the collective dimension, it's something really we cannot feel very comfortable with that. What is then naturalism? Sperber defines naturalism as a reconceptualization of social phenomena on the only basis of social CCC. Okay, it's a clear definition of a naturalist, of a kind of naturalist program, reconceptualization of social phenomena on the only basis of social cognitive causal chain. Okay. But what does it mean to be social for a cognitive causal chain if it is in fact a CCCC with a 4C? We cannot reconceptualize social phenomena on this basis alone. Naturalization as a form of a pious wish, a wishful thinking. Social ontology and naturalism. Even if I developed what I have just said, even if the description of social phenomena is cognitive, it needs more than causal chains. We need at least two mechanisms more in the CCC in order to establish CCCC, or social CCCC, requalification and substitution of processes. Transmission of information alone is not enough. You understand, you have two steps. You have a first step from individual representation to social representation with the CCC, and from the really with implicitly or potentially social to the explicitly social with the CCCC. We have these two steps, but transmission of information alone is not enough. I will give an example of requalification and substitution. I take that these examples in our book of Livet and Nef, Les êtres sociaux. Requalification is a social process in which we may have a qualification, number one, and thereafter receive a new qualification. And the qualification, number two, is substituted to the number one. I will take a very, very simple example. Somebody noticed that the people which he is are very poor, and he wants to give some money, but he don't want to be, I don't know, arrogant or unpleasant. And he left at the table a sum of money. And after that, people found that sum of money, and they think, oh, he had forgotten the money. But in fact, it was not an oblivion. It was, in fact, a gift. And in that very, very simple kindergarten example, we have a sort of requalification. And I think that requalification is a very, very, very usual and very important rule in social phenomena. And I think that transmission of information and the program of naturalization is not enough in order to have a good description of requalification. And substitution, I have to make an allusion to the next diapo. Substitution is no. Excuse me, I made a mistake. I want to say that this example of requalification is not the same as an example I will speak in the next diapo. This example is an example of Sperber. Sperber says that you make a wink like that, okay? And you can make that wink in two different contexts. In the first context, you want to transmit an information. For example, don't talk further about that. It is a very delicate matter. Please stop. But you can use a wink in a second manner only as a sort of quotation of the wink, of the first wink itself. If you have noticed that perhaps the man was winking, it's possible to say winking, in order to deliver an information, and you find that completely ridiculous, you can look at somebody else and say that. It does not mean that this man has to stop his discourse, but that the first one was ridiculous with that sort of transmission of information with a wink. That is sort of sort of théâtral de transmission. Donc, I think that the requalification in my example and the wink case are not the same. I think that the wink case is in fact an example of Austinian theory. We were at lunch, we were discussing about Austinian theory, and I think that it is regular Austinian theory. But I think that requalification is not regular Austinian theory. Substitution is a very general phenomenon, and I will not insist because it's a very, very well-known phenomena for social activities. You know that actors' activities may be substituted, and it is a basis of social life. And I think that substitution and requalification are very important, and probably it will be difficult to integrate this mechanism in causal chains, in pure causal chains of transmission of information on the basis of a process. Naturalism versus social hermeneutics. Sperber opposes his naturalist stance to interpretative approach, social hermeneutics. An example, a real wink and a simulated wink. According to him, the distinction between the two is merely an ontological difference. Ontological is in the text. Concerning social hermeneutics, according to Sperber, meaning is declared to be public and present in the event. Therefore, external to naturalism. I cannot understand that argument. I cannot understand why, in that case, it is external to naturalism. And for naturalism, meaning is a relational property constituted by causal relation between public events and others. You can see that the difference between social hermeneutics and naturalism is not, according to Sperber, that naturalism eliminates, frankly, ontology. No. It seems to be quite the reverse. What is in cause is in fact social ontology, not ontology or ontological in itself. It's a very, very curious distinction. Two problems. If there is an ontological difference between the two types of wings, what does ontological mean here? What does it mean that meaning is a relational property of the event? In fact, Sperber's social naturalism is grounded, it begins to appear so, on a complex ontology, meaning, event, property. Social naturalism does not eliminate ontology. We have to note chiasmus. Chiasmus is correct? Because I have never heard that term. And chiasmus. You accept? You accept?
Yeah, just no US. Chiasm. No US.
Ah, okay. Usually we oppose mental events to social events. Sperber puts things in a crosswise arrangement. Cognitive events are embodied processes, he insists, and social events are mentalized processes. Both are situated and distributed. The difference between cognitive and social phenomena is only of quantity, a difference of scale, of size. We cannot neutralize the difference between what is individual and what is collective simply in insisting on the mentalization of social phenomena. It is my point of view. The simple equivalence between social and cognitive phenomena is simply asserted without justification, and conceptual clarification by a social ontology is clearly in order here. I think that social ontology has something to do here at that point. An example. Dan Sperber asks this ontological question. Where exactly? Alors, petit chaperon rouge, c'est Little Red. C'est bon. D'accord, parce que je me souvenais, d'accord. Dan Sperber asks this ontological question. Where exactly is the little Red Riding Hood in space in time? This question could seem absurd, but we have to remember that naturalists admit only spatio-temporal beings. Dan Sperber's answer is the little Red Riding Hood is a causal cognitive chain that articulates mental and public version of this tale. You know, you have many versions of the tale situated in space, in time, and you have a causal chain connecting or relating the different versions of the tale. Okay. This answer in terms of cultural causal cognitive chain is limited to the tokens of the little red reading hood. It is in italic, the little red reading hood, because it is a tale. It is not the personnage. Out of these chains of tokens emerges the tale type we consider to be the little red reading hood. It's a problem we have if you have read Vladimir Prop on the morphology of folk tale, a classic of semiotics and anthropology, and it's a book on the manner of going from the different version to a type of the. There is the same difficulty with institution, especially with constitution, jurisprudence, etc. There is a strong ontological presupposition in the model of cultural transmission that this transmission of tokens would be along causal chains. But in that case, we have two main social ontological concepts in presence: emergence of a type, of the tale type, and causation, this transmission through causation in causal chains. I will take two examples. I will be a little provocative with that two examples. Yes. Concerning causation. As you know, you have many sort of theory of causation. But one of the last theories of causation is the manipulative theory of causation. The motivation for this theory is the following. When you are a child, you learn to act on the objects exactly if there are some recipes of action. And progressively, you have a sort of internalization of these recipes, and in fact, when you are an adult, you have the abstract causal relation, but this abstract causal relation is in fact a manipulative relation. It's a very strange theory, but as strange theory could be useful. And in that case, this theory as widely discussed, you can have a difference between causation in biological or physical world and the causation in social world. Take roughness causes blackness. Roughness, it is a character to be a raven, un corbeau. But roughness causes blackness. From the point of view of a manipulative theory of causation, what you have to know is what you can manipulate in order to make the relation of causation true. It's very simple. You have the DNA of the raven, and you manipulate this DNA in a way that, in order that the raven are black. Okay, but if you have gender differences, cause prejudices. It's very hard because you cannot see very easily what sort of factors you have to manipulate, and the connection between these factors are hugely complex, and the manipulative theory in fact in that case has a sort of failure. And some people think that the manipulative theory, besides being very provocative and very sexy, has the advantage of being a sort of source for a criticism of some very bad relation we try or we tend to accept in social sciences because gender differences cause prejudices. I don't say that it is false, but in fact it is a very complicated matter to decide exactly what it does mean. Okay. In manipulation reduction, we know from the point of view of naturalist reduction in 1 what to manipulate, nor in 2. It means that if we have causal chains, if we have causation, we have perhaps to engage ourselves on the way of thinking about causation. And if we take a very recent theory, in fact, it gives a sort of difference between social and non-social. It is a point rather important. And emergence, I will not insist on that because emergence is a very important social ontological concept. And you can think about emergence of norms out of conflicts and emergence of conflicts out of norms too. The version, I come back to the version of the tale. According to Sperber, we make a distinction between the abstract, the Red Riding Hood, and the entities endowed with causal powers. The different version of this tale, as it is told or memorized, and the naturalization of social sciences means that here that we focus on this transmission of public and individual version. But I think that I am very fair in the way I am giving a summary of Sperber theory. But there is an ontological presupposition. The social version would be a stabilization of the different version. How not to reduce each version to a pure mereological fusion of elements? Where does the structure of the tale comes from? And it is, in fact, I think a real question. According to Sperber, institutions are located at a higher level than cognitive and social representation. And in his theory, we have also a multi-level ontology, material processes, representation, and institutions. The problem with that sort of ontology is the passage from a level to another. CCCC make possible the passage from individual material processes to collective and mental representation. I think that you have understood that passage. And CCCC will make possible the passage from representation to institution. Institutions are defined as articulating hierarchically interrelated causal cognitive chains. The difference between mere CCCC and institution is that their transmission or propagation is socially under the control of norm. It is a Sperber example. If the story of the is this story must be told at Christmas at midnight, it becomes an institution. If you have exactly the same tale, but if you have a normative statement saying that every Christmas at midnight we must tell this tale to the little children in the house, in that case, according to Sperber, it is an institution. It is not only collective representation. Not collective, it's not a Sperber stuff, it's not a representation. The difference between the two levels, representation and institutions, is the presence of norms at the higher level of institutions. But nothing explains the appearance of these entities and what they consist of. Processes, representation. We need a social ontology with a special mechanism of norm emergence, or if you don't like emergence, norm supervenience, norm reduction, whatever you want, but something. We need a mechanism of emergence for norms and institutions in order to achieve the naturalization of social phenomena. It is also my point. The causal cognitive chains make possible to describe the distribution of representation, but not to explain the emergence of social phenomena out of individual representation. And I don't say that it is easy. But what I mean is that when naturalization gives the feeling that in fact it is not important, it's too much. Now I will try to make explicit Sperber's implicit ontology. The predicate ontological is used several times by Sperber. He is not allergic to phobic to this predicate. Ontological levels, meaning is ontological, and so on. For example, the conception of meaning adopt is called ontological, as we have seen a few minutes ago. But epidemiology, as I have said too, is said to be deprived of specific ontology, and the context indicates that it is an advantage. I think that in order to reconstruct that ontology, we can proceed in a very simple way, in a very childish way, but I am a minimalist and it would be minimal. The first step is a list of ontological concepts. I think that this list is rather short, but not too short, in fact. Processes, causal processes, material processes, levels. For example, Sperber says these, without S, these two types of description belong to distinct ontological levels. It does mean that we have levels. Chains, causal cognitive chains, and so on. But also properties, events, institutions, and so on. Second step, to put ontological concepts in order. In order to make explicit the social ontology presupposed in Sperber's social naturalism, we have to make a distinction within the list of ontological concepts. We have to make a threefold distinction. Concepts concerning the ultimate components relative to the architecture of the theory, level, and so on. Concept relative to the entities whose existence is affirmed by the theory, event, and so on. And third, general descriptive or thematic concept, theoretical terms, ontologically loaded, social, material. I think that the more difficult thing to discuss is the third sort of ontological concepts. And we have to proceed in the following manner to go from the ontological vocabulary to ontological theory. Whereas ontological vocabulary, put into order, is a list of terms relative to general import and categorical content, ontological theory is a system of entities with relation of dependence, foundation, supervenience, not surveillance, it's a blunder, sorry. Supervenience, connection. A hint for the reconstruction of the theory, it is not possible to have V, a vocabulary, without T, a theory, underneath as a prerequisite. I think so. And it is perhaps in that sense that I am not completely a nominalist. Types of implicit ontology. We have three types of implicit ontology in Sperber's ontology. I think that we have to make this distinction too. We have an implicit ontology relative to the model. We have an ontology relative to a model, and here relative to the epidemiological model. We have an ontology relative to assumption. Ontology relative to the ultimate existential assumption. Probably if we discuss with Sperber, he will admit that there is an external space where the transmission of information takes place. I suppose so. I suppose that he is not a Berkelerian or a crazy idealist, no. And everything is possible, but I don't suppose that. And in that case, there is an ultimate existential assumption. And carving. I think that ontology is identical to the carving of general concepts which divide the reality. It's perhaps a solution concerning this third type of theoretical concept, ontologically loaded. They make a sort of division of the reality, so to speak. In David Lewis' ontology, natural properties do that. But as you know, from an ontological point of view, it is something very, very delicate to admit that you have natural properties. But natural properties, according to David Lewis, are cutting the reality exactly at the good point. But if you don't have these sort of natural properties, the division of the reality is made in general by the theoretical concept. The strategies of elimination of ontology of Sperber are the following. Various types of ontology elimination correspond to these three types of implicit character. Relative to the ontology, relative to the model, affirms that we choose a model which is deprived of ontology. It was Sperber's. Assumption. Reduce general assumption to conceptual truths of common sense. He doesn't say that, but in fact, what he does very often, and what naturalists very often do. And when somebody makes a remark that they are doing that, they say, "Oh, good, we love very much common sense." Okay, but if you ask what is common sense, difficulties begin. Carving. Either refuse that reality is carved at the good juncture, or to say that this carving is only a projection of a cognitive scheme, that is, projectivist elimination of naturalist properties. It's this strategy, these naturalist strategies of elimination of ontology are practiced by Sperber. The affirmation was that we choose a model deprived of ontology, reduction of assumption to truths of common sense, and to say that in fact reality is not curved at the good juncture by natural properties, but that it is only a projectivist, a projection of human mind. But we can eliminate the elimination. And concerning the model, what does it mean? Concerning the epidemiological model, we can make explicit a social ontology. The social ontology relative to epidemiology. A community of animals of the same species or of different species. I am waiting for the species later. Cross-species infections and so on. A territory featured by various epidemiological parameters, size, temperature, humidity. I can be a naturalist too, no? When I am thinking about humidity. Only a good naturalist can think about humidity, no? Yes, yes, I am. Infectious causal powers of microbes, bacteria, viruses. So, if we have this elimination on the side of the model, we can reply in showing that, in fact, this model is relative to a very good and very complex ontology. Elimination of the elimination. Assumptions and carving. According to social naturalism, the reality is divided in function of the adaptation of organisms respective to various selective conditions. In a few lines I have put the thesis. But the division itself expressed in many conceptual systems is not purely conceptual. For concepts are subsuming things of various kinds and cannot be reduced to a pure classification of terms. A concept is a concept of something, and this something is not existing in virtue of being represented by a concept. And in that case, we can fight the elimination relative to the assumption and carving. And that's end.